So, welcome back to today's episode. Today we cover the third part of the tree series of the, in German, Waldbäume, die wichtigsten Baumarten in Deutschland, which is an article from Waldhilfe, which is a German, I think, nature supporting magazine or something. And yeah, I just called it a tree series. I think 10 or something, wait, let's count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 13, apparently 13. Most common tree species in Germany, and yeah, last episode we covered the Kiefer, so which translates to pine. I know there's a lot of confusion between the translations, because there are a lot of translations like pine and pinia, which are very similar, and you can kind of get very confused very fast. But yeah, first episode we covered the Fichte, which is spruce, and I made a short introduction to the series. And yeah, this episode we're gonna cover the Rotbuche. So, as always, I'm gonna translate it word by word, then word by word in context, not in context, in terms of the sentence, like the sentence structure, in terms of like English words in German, not English words, English translations in the German sentence structure, and then in German, like in context. And yeah, let's just dive right into it. Today we have the Rotbuche. Last week we had the Kiefer, and then the week before the Fichte, which were both evergreens, I think you call them. In German you call them basically needle trees, Nadelbäume, which is of course the plural form of like Baum from Baum, like Bäume from Baum, sorry. Nadelbäume, needle trees, so coniferous trees basically, or evergreens I think you call them also. And yeah, in Germany we have them, I think Rotbuche a lot. This is not to be confused with it's called Hainbuche, but I think it's not a real beech. Hainbuche, by the way, means hornbeam. Sorry, Hainbuche with uppercase H because it's a noun. Whilst so it's not a real, in terms of the English language, it's not a real beech, but in German it's called Hainbuche, so Hain beech basically, but I think it derives from Birkengewächse, which means birch, something growing within the birch family. So it's related to the birches, in German Birke or Birken, plural. And yeah, they look basically, by the way, they look very similar from the bark. Are there any pictures of bark? Rinde it's called in Germany. Not necessarily bark, I want to see Stamm. But there are still pretty good pictures. I don't necessarily know if they're all the same, like with this and this, because this is not really doesn't have these, how do you call them? In German we call them Rillen, grooves. But I don't know, I think there are probably also within this group maybe different kind of, not species, but what's it called, like types maybe. Let's see if there are any other pictures of the stem, I think it's called. Yeah, I think that's maybe this, but this also looks similar to oak, I believe, but I don't know, I'm not an expert in this field. Anyways, this just goes to say that in Germany we have a lot of them, I think. I think where I'm from, there are a lot of beeches, like in this case, really translated red beeches, but it just means, I think, European beech or something. Rotbuche, European beech. And this is, I think, probably the most common tree I've seen there. Then I think oak is very common too. Hainbuche, which I was saying earlier, is also very, very common, but I don't know if I can even differentiate between them, so yeah, maybe I'll just count them as one, but yeah. And another tree, I think hazelnut tree, is it called? Hazelnut tree? Hase? Yeah, probably very common too. Then we have maybe Esche, but I'm not quite sure about all of them. Ash, but this is just what I've known like to be very, very common. And yeah, let's just start. Die Rotbuche würde von Natur aus eine große Fläche Mitteleuropas einnehmen. Die Rotbuche, the Central European beech would von Natur aus, we had that in like previous episodes, by nature, eine große Fläche, a big area or a lot of space, Mitteleuropas, Middle Europe, of Middle Europe einnehmen, which means to take in. So Mitte can also mean like a tool basically. So for example, when you say, ich habe nicht das Mittel, dies und das zu tun, just write that down. Ich habe nicht, for example, in a lot of articles about like people who don't have a lot of money, they say, ich habe nicht, or sie haben nicht, but in this case I'm going to write it from the I form. Ich habe nicht die Mittel, ein besseres Leben zu leben, something like that, I don't know. And this is just, I don't have, the means maybe is the better translation, but yeah. So tools means the same in German in terms of Mitte. It can also mean like Putzmittel, which is often like shortened or abbreviated to just Mitte, so cleaning products. And Mitte, Mitteleuropas, but in this case it's referring to, of course, the word Mitte, so like middle of something, Mitte. And Middle Europe, Central Europe, probably in English. Einnehmen can either mean to take something in, like nehmen means to take, carry, wear, whatever, these kinds of things. Like nehmen can have different meanings, but generally something like holding, could like holding up, getting something from somewhere, take basically. But it can also mean, as I said, carry, wear. Anyways. Einnehmen, ein in general means one. In this case, it's a prefix and means like in, basically. So take in. Einnehmen in this case means to take a lot of space. So to claim basically something. But it can also mean like to take in medication or something. And so die Rotbuche würde von Natur aus eine große Fläche Mitteleuropas einnehmen. The European beech would, from nature out, or by nature, a big area, Middle Europe, of Middle Europe, take in, or as in the context, the European beech would by nature take up a lot of space of Middle Europe. Die Rotbuche, so the European beech. Da sie viel Schatten verträgt, würde die Rotbuche die meisten Wälder in Deutschland von Natur aus dominieren. Sie kann unter anderen Baumarten aufwachsen, deren Nachkommen dann im Schatten der Buche nicht mehr genug Licht finden. Auf fast allen Standorten, die nicht besonders feucht, besonders trocken oder sehr hoch im Gebirge gelegen sind, ist sie zu Hause. Im Zuge des Klimawandels könnte die Buche aber zunehmend in Bedrängnis geraten, weil es in den meisten Teilen Deutschlands wärmer und trockener wird. Das Holz der Buche ist hart und im Möbelbau sehr geschätzt. Bei guter Qualität erreicht es gute Preise. So, da in general means there, but in this case it means as or because. Da sie means she, but in this case it's not in this case, but in general she, if it's not referring to a person, is of course translated into English it, because it's a thing. Or what do you say? In German it's Ding oder Gegenstand. Object, because it's an object basically, so thing, object. So as it or she, viel, a lot, many, much, Schatten, shadow, verträgt, which we had also in some previous episode, I believe, which also derives from the word tragen. Which derives from the word tragen, which means to carry to wear. Oh, I think I confused that in the beginning with einnehmen. Nehmen is of course not to carry or to wear. Nehmen is just to take. Sorry. And So this was the carry and what was it? Vertragen. Yeah, this derives from the word tragen, which means to carry, to wear, to take, to bear rather in terms of ertragen. And so vertragen means to be able to take. Ver, we had that in some previous episode, or in the last episode I believe, is rather a prefix a lot of times used to explain, or what's it called, indicates that something is not necessarily going in the right direction. So you could also argue that vertragen, if you were to take it quite literally, means to carry something away in a wrong direction, like ich vertrage diesen Stuhl, which nobody says it because you would think I don't. Ich vertrage diesen Stuhl. I'm just gonna write that down. You could say that if it just meant what I was explaining, but nobody says that because vertragen means tolerate, but most in terms of food or like just well-being generally. But in this case, you could say, if you were to take that literally, ich vertrage diesen Stuhl, I carry this chair somewhere else. But nobody says it like that because it's not a word in this case, even though it would be correct if it were to be taken literally. But as this is not the case, it is to be taken as tolerate, or to be, or like, as tolerate, as bear, as be able to, what's it called, to verdauen, digest, to be able to digest, or yeah, to eat maybe also something, like in terms of allergies. And yeah, Schatten verträgt, so it can bear a lot of shadow, you could say, or darkness. Da sie viel Schatten verträgt, as it much shadows tolerates, basically. Würde die Rotbuche, would, this just means wood, not to be confused with the wood, this wood, not the other, this wood, which of course is also very close to the topic we're talking about, but this wood is of course meant. But not to be confused, the Würde with the noun, die Würde, which should mean dignity. Yeah. And yeah. Die Rotbuche, the European beech. Die meisten Wälder. By the way, Rot means red, Buche means beech, so it would be quite literally to translate a red beech, and it means European beech. Die meisten Wälder, the most forests or woods, derives from the word Wald, which is the singular form, der Wald. Yeah. And in Deutschland, in Germany, von Natur aus, here we have it again, which we had here, by nature, dominieren, which is the same in English basically, not the same, but kind of the same. Dominieren is dominate, if I'm not completely wrong, which I am not. And yeah, so da sie viel Schatten verträgt, würde die Rotbuche die meisten Wälder in Deutschland von Natur aus dominieren. As she a lot of shadows bears, or can bear, or tolerate, would the red beech, or European beech, the most forest in Germany, from nature out or by nature, dominate. So as it can bear a lot of shadow, or tolerate a lot of shadow, darkness, whatever, the European beech would by nature dominate most of the forests in Germany, or basically populate most of the forests in Germany. Sie kann unter anderen Baumarten aufwachsen, deren Nachkommen dann im Schatten der Buche nicht mehr genug Licht finden. Sie kann, she can, unter anderen, under, can also mean among, but in this case it's unter means under, I believe. Anderen, other, Baumarten, Baum, tree, Arten, derives from the word art, of course, which means not art in terms of Kunst, which means art, but art in terms of type, of course. So, Baumarten, tree types, aufwachsen, Here we have the prefix auf, which means to indicates to something to go up. So, because auf means up. And wachsen is not to be confused with the wachsen of the deriving from the word wax, not wash, wax, which indicates wax. Wachsen means to wax in this term, in this way, which I just right now mean it, is wachsen in terms of legs, like body parts, to get rid of the hair. But in general, it means to grow, and aufwachsen is basically grow up. It's also used for like children or younger people, they grow up. In English, the up is at the end and a different, like a word on its own. In German, it's just the prefix, so it's basically to upgrow. And yeah, so it can also, under other tree species, grow up, basically. Dieren, this is a, what's it called? I think relative something, whatever. Like, it derives from the genitive case where we have here. I'm just gonna try to illustrate the cases because I've always been wanting kind of to explain it like a bit. Keep in mind, I'm not necessarily a pro at explaining grammar, but I'm just trying to illustrate the whole thing like in a basic way. So we have, of course, the nominative. I'm just doing it in German. Nominative. Then we have the, I'll just choose some random, what's it called? Reihenfolge, order, some random order. I think we all got to kind of know it, like, I think it's dative or accusative and then genitive. I'm just going to do accusativ, dativ, genitiv, and nominativ is, for example, der Baum. Then we have der Baum, sorry, die Frau, and then we have das Blatt. Maybe I should do it this way, is better, so you can see it better. Then we have den Baum. Then we have, what was it? Die Frau again, I think, if I'm not completely mistaken, because it can be a bit confusing if you think about it, like in terms of the cases only. But you just have to ask, by the way, let me just write the questions behind the words. Wer oder was, which means who or what. Sorry, this. Wer oder was. Then we have wen oder was. Then we have wem. I think it's only wem, if I'm not completely mistaken. Wem. Because was gebe ich? No, it should be wem gebe ich das, even if it's an object. Because it sounds like, to a German speaker, it sounds like to a person, but you could also say wem ich gebe dem Buch ein Wort. I mean, it sounds pretty literal. Ich gebe dem Buch ein Wort. I mean, it's kind of not really a sentence because it does make sense, but you get what I mean. Just because it's an object, I give the book a word. So, and genitive is wessen, which can be a bit complicated maybe, or more complicated for non-German speakers who don't necessarily have these cases. So, der Baum, die Frau, das Blatt, which are the nominative cases. So, like, the tree is standing there, der Baum steht dort, die Frau sitzt dort, the woman sits there, das Blatt liegt auf dem Tisch, the paper or leaf lies on the table. Wen oder was? Den Baum, die Frau, das Blatt. They're only, apparently, as you can see, I've never really thought about it, this is what I said, apparently, only the masculine case changes. So when I say ich sehe den Baum, this is wen oder was basically means who or whom or what. In English it's translated to whom or what, so who I'm doing that to. Den Baum, like not who I'm doing that to, who I'm doing something with basically. So a which we had earlier, a Mittel, you could say, a tool, or what's it called? The thing you're doing something with. So, wen oder was? Den Baum. Ich sehe den Baum. Ich gebe den Baum meiner Freundin, whatever. Ich sehe den Baum. I see the tree. Then we have die Frau. Ich sehe die Frau. It's the same. Ich sehe die Frau. Nothing changes. And then we have ich sehe das Blatt. Keep in mind that in a lot of cases, the neutral form das is taken on, I think, the masculine form, but in some cases, especially in the plural forms, I believe it's, I don't know, I don't necessarily know too much about it, but I think it also then changes to like the feminine and takes more feminine, but don't blame me for that if that's wrong, but I think in some cases at least it is true. So then we have wem, dem Baum. Sorry, Google. So annoying. Dem Baum. Who give us something to dem Baum? Like for example, ich gebe dem Baum Wasser. I'm just gonna do something. Ich gebe dem Baum Wasser. Then we have der Frau, which can be confusing because der is of course also the nominative masculine case, so der Baum, and here is der Frau. You should never say der Frau in terms of subject, like nominative case, so don't say der Frau geht in das Geschäft. It's not correct. I mean, you can say that and people will still get what you mean, but it's of course not correct. And but if you're talking in like who you're giving something to, or for example, it's also going to be the same in genitive. Das Buch der Frau, for example, the book of the woman, or the woman's book. It's correct in this case, but in general, if you're unsure, like for example, if you only know the nominative case, like die Frau, just use it for everything. It's better than just using any case you know, so yeah. But I think in general you rather learn the nominative case anyways, but of course with time you're gonna just get that and understand that it's gonna be in your blood. And der Frau. Ich gebe der Frau ein Buch. And then we have the neutral case, which is dem Blatt. Das Blatt, dem Blatt. Ich schreibe auf dem Blatt. I write on the paper. And yeah, this is without an object, so without an accusative case again, because this we had here, but in this case it also is possible without it, so yeah. And the genitive case, which can be a bit more confusing, is wessen, so whose basically. So for the masculine form, for the der form, der Mann, des. Did we have man? No, we had tree. Sorry. Der Baum, so des Baumes. And this is like das ist ein Blatt. Sorry. Blatt des Baumes. This is a leaf of the tree. Then we have der Frau again, which I said a minute ago, or 2 minutes, or whatever. And it is, so for example, das ist ein Buch von der Frau, but in general, no, it's the same as then as dative case, von der Frau. This is the way you would say that in like colloquial German, because we have a saying kind of like Genitiv ist Dativ, no, what is it called? Dativ ist dem Genitiv sein Tod, which is if you want to learn more about it, like genitive colloquial German, like leaving out the genitive and always using von, just Google, like, not necessarily that, but like, this is a famous kind of saying, Dativ ist dem Genitiv sein Tod. Yeah. Anyways, but just Google dative, genitive, colloquial German, something like that, and it should basically kind of be there. Die Frau, der Frau, die Frau, der Frau, so das ist das Buch der Frau. And yeah, so in English, I think you either always use this with apostrophe, I think it's called, and an S, or you just say off, because you don't have these cases. Or, yeah, no, you don't have these cases, at least in this kind of ways in German. And because you differentiate in English, but you don't do it the way you do it in German. But in German, you can say das Buch der Frau. In English, you would never say like the book, the woman. I know in English it's different because it's what's it called? Like, it's with a case, and this way it makes sense. But just to kind of illustrate what the difference is between the cases, like languages with cases and languages kind of without them. So, der Frau, and then we have des Blattes. So, for example, das ist eine Kopie des Blattes. Yeah, this is a copy of the paper. And yeah, just to get to what I was saying earlier, and why I was saying all of that is because, where was I? Deren, here. It's because this is a very, I wouldn't say very special, but a also genitive relating construction, because we have this is, how do I say this? This is basically also kind of genitive, but referring to something that is coming after that. So referring to, in this case, deren Nachkommen. And this is kind of different. I mean, I don't necessarily know if I'm correct in saying it has to do something with genitive, but in my view, it has something to do with genitive. I'm just gonna Google this. Deren, dessen, so I don't say anything wrong. And it of course relates to something after it, because deren, and there is a subject, like for example, it just translates to whose in English, but I'm just kind of trying to explain the structure behind that. Dieser, welcher, welches. Dieser means this, dieser, diese, dieses, this, but basically, or that, this, that, yeah, this or that, but gendered. Welcher, welch, and welches is which. It's also the same, which, what, you could also say. And then we have dessen, deren, derer, which is kind of genitive, like, kind of related to that. Here, it says, die Formen dessen, derer, deren, derer sind bereits flektiert, which I think means some kind of, like, in terms of the genders of the nouns or something, like, it's German, you say, I think, gebeugt or something, bent, and, yeah, basically bent it means, but in English you wouldn't say bent nouns, I think. Gebeugte Nomen, if I'm not, inflected, I think it's called, yeah, this is the way it's called. Und können nicht mehr verändert werden, and can't be changed, or like can't be changed anymore in this case. Varianten wie dessem oder ähnliches gibt es nicht. O.ä. Ö. Ä. Always means oder ähnliches. Oder ähnliches. So they are not there. And So, das Pronomen dessen steht immer für ein männliches oder sächliches Wort im Singular, die Form deren für alle anderen Wörter, also weibliche im Singular und alle Geschlechter im Plural. Yeah, this is what I was saying. Like in a lot of cases, I mean, I said that with the neutral form, but that the feminine form is the plural more being taken over for the cases. Like the pronoun dessen always stands for a masculine or neuter word in the singular, the form deren for all other words, for example, or in example, feminine in the singular and all genders in the plural. So it's basically like die, where it's the feminine singular form, and die is the plural form. And yeah. So it's kind of like, I think it refers to, doesn't it refer to these? I'm kind of confused, but when I think about it, doesn't necessarily, I don't find an explanation. Anyways, because this is very, like, grammatically speaking, I don't necessarily understand everything they're, like, saying, but, yeah. So, auf der Bank saß ein Mann, dessen Hund ging auf mich los. So, on the bank sat a man sat on a bank, dessen Hund ging auf mich los und, so, just saying, dessen Hund ging auf mich los, and here's the point, basically, we're just gonna shorten it. And so, how do you translate that into English? Dessen, so, he, like, belonging to him, basically, Hund, dog, ging auf mich los, went on me, start, basically, or, like, which of this just means losgehen. In this case, this is very kind of colloquial, start in general, means to basically attack someone, and so dessen Hund ging auf mich los, his, like, belonging to him, dog went to attack me. Yeah, it's the same for feminine and for plural. Feminine and plural are the same, so not the same, but the same sentence, and the same form is for them, for her, for plural, feminine, and for plural. And by the way, for neutral form, it's also so dessen. And here is the sentence we had. Die Frau, not we had, but the structure we had. Die Frau, deren Hund auf mich losging. So the woman of that the dog went after me. You could also say went after me. But yeah. I'm just trying to... Is there another explanation why this is... I think basically, if I'm getting that correctly, because I've never really thought about this is why I'm kind of finding it hard to explain it. Yeah. This is why I was confused, because I thought it had to do maybe with genitive. I mean, it has to do with genitive, but more with des, something genitive. But if I'm getting that correctly, it is of this, basically. This belonging to so of this, like, translated into English. I'm just, like, in German in a sentence I would understand that, like, of course 100%, but I wouldn't necessarily be able to explain that. So apparently it derives from dieser, which you don't necessarily see when you just look at it. Maybe someone else, but I didn't. But so it derives from dieser, dieses, which is dieser, dieses, which is this, these, this, or this, because this is the feminine form, neutral form, and then we have, of course, the plural form, which is the same as diese. And so of this, basically, and so dessen is for the dieser form, is also for dieses form, like, for example, dieses Blatt dessen, or das Blatt dessen, to just have another example or use the example from before. Das Blatt dessen, der Mann dessen, not dessen, which they said that was incorrect. Of course it's incorrect, nobody uses that. And then we have die Frau deren, and then we have die, I don't know, Menschen deren, so the people whose, blah blah blah. Yeah. And okay, so I think that was it, explaining this kind of grammatical thing, structure, with which I've never really thought about, but anyways. And let's move on. Deren Nachkommen. So here we have it, and it is what I remember is that it's always like connected with a subject coming after this, which we have here, mostly without an article in front of that. So you don't say deren die Nachkommen, you say deren Nachkommen, so without an article. And yeah, so sie kann unter anderen Baumarten aufwachsen. She or it can under other tree species grow up. Deren, of those, whose, basically in this case. Nachkommen, which I think means offspring, if I'm not completely mistaken. Progeny, offspring, children basically. Nachkommen, not to be confused with nachkommen, which is as a verb to come after, to follow. Nach, which means after. Kommen, which means to come. This. And Nachkommen, so offspring. Dann, im, in dem, in the. Schatten, shadow, we have that here. Plural of that is, by the way, also Schatten. Der Buche, of the beech in this case. Not to be confused with birch, because beech and birch sound very similar, but in German it's Birke. So this is birch, and Buche is beech. Yeah. And im Schatten der Buche, in the shadow of the beech. Nicht mehr, not animo. Mehr means in general more, but in this case it means animo, not animo. Nicht mehr, not more, not animo. Genug, which means enough. Licht means light. Finden, to find. So she can, under other tree species, grow up, whose offspring or children or whatever, then in the shadow of the beech, not anymore enough light find. So she can also grow beneath or under other tree species, like growing around, whose offspring can't find enough light in the shadow of the beech. Auf fast allen Standorten, die nicht besonders feucht, besonders trocken oder sehr hoch im Gebirge gelegen sind, ist sie zu Hause. On, almost, auf fast, on almost, allen, all, basically, so dative case, auf wem, auf allen Standorten, auf fast allen Standorten, so on almost all locations. Stand derives from the word stehen. And the past form of that, for example, ich. I means ich stand, and there you can see where it derives from. Or the noun der stand, which can either mean like the stand in terms of like getting food, or the stand in terms of someone standing, and this you call like der Stand. And auf fast allen Standorten, Ort means location, place. So on almost most all locations, or yeah, I think on in this case, but can also be differently translated differently. Die nicht besonders feucht, that not really moist, nicht, not besonders really, This derives from the word sonder, something, whatever, sondern, which is also a preposition, I think. No, preposition, what's it called? Conjunction, rather, but rather, for example. Nicht, sondern, not but, for example. But sonder, general, is something like strange, special, not usual. Like, for example, we have the word Sondermüll, which is like hazardous waste or special waste, or Sonderschule, which means special school. And so on almost all locations, that not besonders in this case means especially or special, or in this case especially, I think, because in English you would say it that way. Moist, feucht means moist. Besonders trocken, especially dry. Oder sehr hoch, or really high. Im Gebirge, in the Gebirge. This, I think, derives from the word Berg, which means mountain. Gebirge is kind of the, what's it called? A connection of, or a chain of multiple mountains, you could say. So mountain ridge, I think it's translated into. Yeah, or mountains, mountain range, ridge. Did I say ridge? Range? Anyways, I think you get what I mean. Gelegen sind, laid, are being laid. Gelegen, so ge basically is indicates either the past or to, not either the past, I think in general it relates to something having happened. So because it's like ich habe gemacht, and this is the what's it called? I forgot the word. The like second past form in German. We have present is the present form, of course, but the like what's it called? I forgot the word. What's it called? No, perfect is the second form, which I'm relating to, like ich habe gemacht, and then we have I have made, and here we have this ge, which is indicating the past, or something, a sentence like das Bett ist gemacht, which is the bed is made. And the first past form is Präteritum. This is what I was kind of forgetting. Präteritum. So in German we have like Präsens, Präteritum, and perfect, and then we have like forms like plusquam, perfect. I think it's kind of written that way. Not necessarily, or maybe this way, but anyways, I think you get what I mean. Plusquamperfect. I wasn't quite sure if it was written with that or not. So, and gelegen, so being laid. Sind, are, so ist sie zu Hause, is she, or in this case in English, it, home. So on almost all locations, that's not especially or special, especially wet, moist, especially dry, or very high in the mountains, in this case, are being laid, or being laid are, is she home. So in almost all locations that are not necessarily too wet or too dry or too high in the mountains, like not being like located, it is home basically, so it is able to grow there. Im Zuge des Klimawandels könnte die Buche aber zunehmend in Bedrängnis geraten, weil es in den meisten Teilen Deutschlands wärmer und trockener wird. Im Zuge, in the, Zuge, not to be confused with Zug, which means train, but this is also, or it can also mean like a move, for example in chess, and this is more relating to that, which is kind of a, you could say a phrase. Im Zuge means in the course of, wait, what was Google saying? In the course of. And like whilst during something happening, or like in the kind of opportunity of doing something, des Klimawandels, of the climate change. Klima means climate, Wandel means change, and this is the des, so it's genitive case. Könnte, could, die Buche, the beach, aber, but, zunehmend, sure, some word, nehmen, take, zunehmen, can either mean like to gain weight or to increase in general. In German you would kind of say like to increase, when we say like ich habe zugenommen, for example. Zugenommen, I have gained weight. And this just means, basically translated into English, I have increased. But in English you'd say I have gained weight. In German we don't say ich habe Gewicht zugenommen. You could say ich habe Gewicht, but nobody probably says that. I mean, not nobody, but least what's it called? Least of people. Not a lot of people say that, basically. And könnte die Buche aber zunehmend in Bedrängnis geraten. Could the beach, but zunehmend in this case means increasingly. Zunehmend, so basically the saying, what's it called? Like whilst doing something, I don't know. Like something participle, I don't know. And zunehmend in Bedrängnis geraten. In Bedrängnis means the Straßenwort Drang, which means to the urge, or drängen rather, which it's closer related to. Drängen, which means to, basically urge someone to force someone to. And in Bedrängnis geraten is also a kind of saying. I mean, it means what it says, but it kind of sounds poetic. Bedrängnis geraten means to get into trouble, or to basically kind of, what it's saying is to lose space, so you don't necessarily have a lot of space left. Because like Bedrängnis means, to be kind of enclosed by something, I think, if I'm saying that right. Bedrängnis, distress, oppression, torment, But geraten means to get into something. You could say this German word raten, but it doesn't have a lot to do with that, because that means to guess or to advise someone. But geraten just means to, basically what I was also saying, I forgot to say earlier, but ge can also mean to kind of passively get into something, and in this case geraten just means to get into something, or to passively happen, rather. In this case, to passively get into something, but in general, ge indicates something passively or the past. And weil es in den meisten Teilen Deutschlands wärmer und trockener wird. Because it in den, the meisten, most, Teilen, parts, Deutschlands, of Germany, wärmer, warmer, und trockener, that's the Russian word warm, by the way, which means warm. Und trockener, of course, trocken means dry. And drier, wird, becoming, will be, this is just, in this case rather becoming. So, im Zuge des Klimawandels was in the course of the climate change, I think. Could the beach, but increasingly get into trouble? I'm just gonna say it like this way, or into trouble gets, something like that. Because it's in the most parts of Germany warmer and drier gets, or becomes. So in the course of the climate change, the beach could increasingly have less space left, I would say, or be threatened, you could also say, because in the most parts of Germany is getting warmer and drier. Das Holz der Buche ist hart und im Möbelbau sehr geschätzt. Das Holz, the wood, der Buche of the beech, ist hart, is hard, und and in the Möbelbau. Möbel means furniture. Singular and plural form is the same. Or in singular form you would rather say Möbelstück. So like furniture piece of furniture. That's Möbelstück. And Möbelbau, there's the Russian word der Bau, can either mean in terms of construction or in terms of like beavers construction, for example. Biberbau, I think, maybe not necessarily, not Berlin. And for example, this is, I think we call it Bau, like from beavers. This kind of thing. I remember from children's books, whatever. And well, they illustrated it this way, I think. Yeah, I was kind of scared. Here, where they also have that, I don't know, not necessarily Bau, maybe also sometimes it's called Damm, but this is rather like a dam where it looks like this. Hello. Why is it not reacting? Here. Like this. It looks usually, which of course is not like applicable to the size of a beaver construction, whatever you want to call it. And yeah. Das Holz der Buche ist hart, und im Möbelbau sehr geschätzt, and in the furniture building sehr, very geschätzt, valued, you could say, because there's the rest of the word Schatz, basically, which means treasure, which is also a kind of, that's basically also an equivalent to like babe or baby as in English in terms of talking to your partner, I would say. And Schatz or Schatzi also. We also have other words like Hase, which means just bunny. Then we have what was another word like for little children is like Mausi or Mäuschen. Then we also have let me think of others. We also have, of course, like meine Liebe, such mein Lieber, which is like my love or my dear. Just you say the name and then mein Lieber, meine Liebe, which you could say my love. It directly, of course, translates to my love, but also my love in terms of like talking to your partner. And do you have any other ones? I think we have some other funny ones, but I can't remember them necessarily. At least not all of them. Schatzi. Maybe I'm gonna Google it. Schatzi Synonym. Darling, yeah, for example, like from English, of course. Herz allerliebster, which is most dear to the heart. Herzblatt, like kind of leaf of the heart. Bärchen, yeah, Bärchen is also something like a little bear, but maybe not necessarily. Then we have Liebling, which is very, very German, which is basically equal to or equivalent to darling. Then we have like more, this was what I was explaining earlier, more for like little children, because you wouldn't necessarily say to someone, I mean you could, but I don't think a lot of people do that, like these types of things. I'm gonna just... I mean, even Hase is very kind of... I don't think it's so much used. Anyways, Mäuschen, Mausi, Schnucki, Schnuckelchen, Bärchen, Püppchen. I don't necessarily have heard them all, but I know that people use them. Which is like Little Mouse, Sweetie, Snugglebug, Teddy Bear, Doll. Yeah. Then we also have like more international things like Darling, Honey, Babe, Habibi, and all these kinds of things. Then we have Zuckerschnute, Zuckerpuppe, Pärchen. But what I was also trying to say earlier is that, like, for example, Püppchen, like when you kind of approach someone in terms of like you want to get to know them, for example, like rather than as a man, because you wouldn't necessarily use that as a woman to approach a man, but like Püppchen is not necessarily that nice to be used, but because it rather is like, how to say that, it's not necessarily the best choice to like approach a woman, as for example Zuckerpuppe is also not very the best choice, or these, I mean, everybody does their own thing, but in general they are not necessarily, I think, seen to be the best choices. And but this is of course just for like getting to know somebody, but or approaching somebody. But in general, like when you know someone, of course anybody does their thing, everybody does their own thing, but yeah, and there you can maybe rather use these kinds of more, I would say they're kind of offensive if you were to use them like generally for someone random, basically. And this is what I'm trying to say. And but in general, yeah, do your own thing if you know someone German. And so, das Holz der Buche ist hart und im Möbelbau sehr geschätzt. The wood of the beech is hard und im Möbelbau and in the furniture, building or construction sehr, very geschätzt, which we were saying earlier. I didn't even get to translate it, as always. Geschätzt, which means valued. No, I did translate it. Valued, or there's another word, appreciated basically also. Bei guter Qualität, did I translate that as one? So the wood of the beech is very hard, or is hard, and very valued in the furniture construction, or in furniture construction. Bei guter Qualität erreicht es gute Preise. Bei guter Qualität erreicht es gute Preise at, or basically in this case it means if it has guter Qualität, or if it is at guter, which means good, Qualität, which means quality, erreicht, derived from the word reichen, which means to be sufficient, range, reach. So reach is very similar. You can kind of see where this is going. And erreichen means to basically get to something, a specific point. So, like, ein Ziel erreichen, reach a goal. And, or, yeah, einen Meilenstein, which should be a milestone. And bei guter Qualität erreicht es gute Preise. So if it has good quality, at good quality, you were to say, if you were to translate that literally, erreicht, reaches it, good. Preise, prices. So if it has good quality, it reaches good prices, I guess. Yeah, and that was it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. That was the third episode of this series. Next episode we're going to be doing the oak, I think. And yeah, that video was of course long. A lot of explanations, a lot of grammar stuff, a lot of figuring out, as always, because I'm not necessarily too familiar with all of that. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed that video. Leave a like, leave a comment if you want to. Have questions. If you have questions, oh my god, I can't talk. If you have questions, you can always like ask them in the comments. I'm always there to answer them. And yeah, that was it for today. See you in the next video. Bye!